right, what's up, y'all? Let's just get the podcast cooking, and then we'll be rolling here. Just let me switch to my podcast software. And 3, 2, 1, lift off. Let me just test this real quick. Audio test. Got it. All right, podcast looks like it's ready to record perfectly. Let's check back on the folks live. Looks like that's working. Awesome. Okay, so what is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Liberated Millionaire Podcast. I am pumped to be with you today, and we are back to broadcasting live. So every day from now on at 2 p.m., or, I'm a little bit late today because I had a bit of a Jimmy John's delivery fiasco, but no worries. We're going to be podcasting live at 2 p.m. Eastern every day. And here's the cool thing. If you want to watch live, your reward for actually watching the podcast live and hanging out is while I don't check the chat when I'm recording because I want to focus on my speaking, I promise to answer the first question typed in the Facebook chat or whatever live stream I end up using chat every day. I promise to answer that question at the end of the podcast and include it as part of the episode. So if you're okay with your name being dropped and your question being asked live on the podcast, then that's awesome. And don't be shy. Just send me a question. And so I'll make sure to check the Facebook Live after I'm done with the content for the episode. But here's what we're talking about today, guys. And it's simple. It's expert week, and I'm teaching what experts do that regular people don't do. With the goal, again, of having less anxiety. Guys, everybody has so much anxiety they don't need. And so this is our goal, right? Is how can we have less anxiety? How can we be just a little bit happier, a little bit more free? And what if we could be a lot more? And today, we're talking about what do experts in relationships do differently? What do experts in relationships do differently? And so let me give you 4 examples of what experts in relationships do differently. The first one is a really simple example, right? Which is Dale Carnegie. Now, you might think of him as this business guy or this, old white guy from way back in the day who wrote these business books. But if you've ever read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's actually not a surface-level people-pleasing book. It's really simple. Honestly, you could just read his first chapter, and if you just followed his first chapter, your life would change. So Dale Carnegie would tell you, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Do you want to know what people who are having success in their relationships are doing? They're not criticizing, condemning, or complaining against other people. Even if they're unhappy with other people, they're not criticizing, condemning, or complaining. Because I want you to think about this. Even if somebody else is in the wrong, let's say you're in your romantic relationship and your partner is in the wrong. Let's say they said something that would just be, certifiably mean, rude, whatever. Like it's just rude, right? Let's say they said something like that, all right? And what's your inclination, right? Is to rip them a new one or to get mad or to tell them because you're trying to fix them. You want that behavior to change, right? And so you're like, why would you say that to me? You need to admit you're wrong right now. This is blah, 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 blah. And that's how most fights start. And that's how all human conflict happens, right? But here's the truth that you need to understand is anytime you criticize someone, even if it's the correct criticism, even if it's right, you're creating a negative experience for that person, right? And this is why I'm so low on constructive criticism, right? I say that replace criticism with standards. Why? Because standards require you to agree to them, and then it's just a standard. It's just something that must happen. It's a standard or a boundary. But one-off criticism never helps anybody. So if you're giving a one-off criticism to your romantic partner, instead, you need to get really creative and have fun and come up with a standard for how your relationship's going to be and then kind of pitch it to them like a salesperson and make them excited about it. And how do you do that? How do you get them excited? Let's move to example 2, right? Example 2 is this guy, Gary Chapman, granted, I'm about to cite 4 white guys in this. So in the times of racial equity, let's be clear. I am a white dude who mostly listens to white dudes, and I understand that different cultures, different places have different ways of communicating, right? So I do communicate in a white male way, and I admit that, and I'm open to that. And so here's the other thing, is that there's a guy, Gary Chapman, who wrote a book, 5 Love Languages. And they're gifts, acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, and something else. I don't know. Obviously not one that I care about. Quality time. That actually I do kind of care about that one. So he has 5 love languages. And so to continue this theme of what successful relationship experts do, they focus on giving the other person the love language that they want, okay? So the first thing you do is just shut your freaking mouth if you are going to complain, right? I want you to understand this, that if you just stopped gossiping and complaining, then just your life would be happy and it would be impossible for it not to be. I hate to say this, but like we all have these huge problems with gossiping and complaining. Actually, I love to say it because then we can get better. So if you have a problem with gossiping or complaining, then that's okay. It's only a problem because you choose to make it one. Just let go of it, right? And then the second thing you do, you're like, well, I'm not going to gossip or complain, but the point of gossiping or complaining or criticizing in your romantic relationship, right, is to influence that person, isn't it? The reason you complain is because you want to influence them to a different behavior. For example, my wife Preetha is on her phone a lot more than I am. I'm one of these hermit introvert types where if my phone was in the bottom of the ocean, I probably wouldn't notice for 4 days. And she not only uses her phone for work, which is really important as an attorney, but she's also constantly texting and stuff. So she's on her phone all the time. And so if, let's say we're talking and in the middle of a deep conversation, she just pulls out her phone and laughs at it and starts doing whatever, I would say that's pretty fair to say that is that's like a rude behavior. There's no real two sides of that argument. It's like, that's rude, okay? But if I just complain at her or criticize her, even though I'm right, even though that might make her stop behaving, what it does is it creates a negative memory of her interacting with me. It means that even when I was right, even when I felt I was in the right, I created a negative memory. So what could I do instead? Well, this Gary Chapman guy and his 5 love languages. Actually, let's see if we have this back here. Yeah. So I have it on my bookshelf. If you're on the podcast, you better start getting on the live podcast at 2 p.m. Eastern so you can see the video. But I have this book, 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. Go buy it. It's great. Secret to Love That Lasts. That's what its caption is. How cute is that? Anyway, so what you do is instead you use your love languages and your understanding of the other person's method of communication to pitch them a new boundary or standard that convinces them to see things your way. So if instead of criticizing Preetha for being on her phone, I said, hey, I've been reading this love languages book, and I know that you really like physical touch, and so I know you would rather get more massages. And in fact, if I'm giving you a back massage and you're lying on the bed, then you can't check your phone because your face is in your pillow, and we could talk and just kind of laugh and be friendly together. And so I'm using love languages to convey what I want rather than reacting in the moment, which would create a negative experience. And that is how I pitch things to Preetha, is I create those scenarios, right? And so that's what the experts tell you to do. But we're starting to get to the central point of this, which is really the key. And this is kind of the big takeaway. And then I'm going to give you a couple more examples. The big takeaway is that relationship experts don't focus on the other person's behaviors. They focus on their own behaviors. If you have issues in your relationship, it's because somehow you have gotten this misconception that your brain thinking about someone else's behavior could mind control them into changing. And that's not what you want in life, and it's not healthy, and it's not even real, in fact. It's only real if someone else lets you in. And so what relationship experts do is they work on themselves and have massive breakthroughs internally, becoming a stronger person and a better person, so that then they can bring more to the relationship, which then creates a place for the other person to grow as well because it's an easier environment, right? So first, I work on myself to not gossip or criticize, right? And I'm always working on that. And that just takes me spending time, It doesn't take my partner to me practice not gossiping or criticizing, right? I don't criticize her. I try not to criticize other people. And it's always a work in progress. But the less you criticize, the better. In fact, this week, right? Here's a great example. This week, I have been doing so much better at doing the dishes and doing stuff that's, around the house. I've become a very good house husband. So I've been like this week, I was on top of it, and I was doing all the dishes, and I was, cleaning, and I was staying on top of chores and going to the grocery and all this. And so I started noticing that Preetha was actually not doing her part of the dishes, which she's supposed to load the dishwasher, and I'm supposed to unload it, right? And then I had noticed that not only was I unloading the dishwasher, but I was loading all my dishes in, and she was letting hers pile up, and then she wasn't running it. And so here's a great example is, One day, she, wasn't loading the dishwasher, and I was like, are you ever going to do the dishwasher? Now, again, by our standards, I'm clearly in the right, because I'm the one doing the dishes and she's not, okay? And so all I'm doing is saying, hey, I'm in the right. Like, look at me grow. You used to complain about me not doing the dishes. Now watch me do the dishes. You need to catch up, right? But what I didn't realize is that created a very negative experience for her. And it wasn't even about the dishes. We're getting into some deep human emotion here. It wasn't about the dishes. But what I didn't know is that in that same week, she'd gotten drama with her friends and work feedback and just chaos at work because everybody's work is crazy right now. And she'd felt like she was getting nagged from a million sides. And so I was just another nagging voice in her head. And that is the single biggest mistake we all make in relationships, is if we criticize at all, we are now grouped with the nagging voices who create a negative experience. Okay? So if you want to know why people don't react well to you or they don't want to hang out with you, it's probably because you create a negative experience. And so first of all, the easiest thing is just stop criticizing. Who cares if the dishes are done, right? It wasn't really bothering me. So first of all, 80% of your criticisms, just stop. It's not a big deal. Let it go. The 20% that matter, just, create a time where it's like, hey, would you mind having a housework checklist that we could go over on Saturday at 2 p.m.? That's all it is. And so again, I have to work on myself to become the person who doesn't criticize either on those meaningless things or who is really strategic with love languages about the things that really matter. But I want you to understand just how much this is about you. It has nothing to do with your partner, right? You are not your partner. You are you. And so what you got to do if you want to be happier in your relationship and have a better relationship is you have to just think, I am the independent variable. My partner's behavior is the dependent variable. What that means is whatever my partner does is all based on how I interact with them. And so it's not about being right or convincing them logically or anything like that. The question is always, what kind of person could I be so that my interactions with them were better? And another example I think of is Tony Robbins. He's a really macho guy. In fact, I was turned off from Tony Robbins for a long time because I thought he was just this macho, tall dude. But I've been to one of his seminars. Thankfully, before COVID happened, I went to his seminar last November. 15,000 people in a basketball stadium. And it was the best, most emotionally intelligent, just wonderful time of my life. I mean, it was amazing. And one of the stories he tells is he created another one of his seminars called Date with Destiny, which is his relationship seminar. He created this seminar for himself. He was having trouble in his romantic relationships, and he said, I need to get better. I need a way to be happier in my relationships. So he was at some resort or in some vacation or something, and he took a notepad, and he wrote down like a maniac all these things. It reminds me so much of myself. He wrote down like a maniac all these different ideas, and then he put himself through an entire process so he could understand his values and what he cared about. And after he did all that, then his relationships got better. And then he tells the story where he took his first employee, like one of his key employees, and was like, I'm putting you through this training, like we're doing this right now, and like threw him in the slammer and did all this. But anyway, the point is, right, what you're seeing in people who are really masters of human influence who are happy in their relationships is they're actually creating programs for themselves, creating their own self-growth programs so that they become the person who's clearer in the relationship. And so if you want to know what the single biggest factor in my romantic relationship being at what I would call like a really excellent state right now, we're just so happy together, it's that I work on myself all the time. It has nothing to do with her. And it's not about crediting one person or the other. The second you believe that there's a credit to one person or the other, that's ridiculous. Your perspective of your relationship is 100% on you. And similarly, Preetha's perspective of our relationship is 100% on her. It's 100% on her to take whatever I'm giving and for her to do the things that get her what she wants out of the relationship. And so there's another book called The Big Leap. Let me see if I have this one here. Nope. I took that one upstairs. Okay, I don't have this one here because I was reading that upstairs. But there's this book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Also an incredible book. And what he says is if he's doing relationship counseling, he's a very life coachy guy. If he's doing relationship counseling, then what he's doing is he will only do it if the couple agrees there is a 200% responsibility. What that means is both people have to be 100% committed to taking actions that solve problems.
So that never means someone admitting they were wrong. It's never this juggle of like saving face and whatever. It's never about that, right? It's never about the saving face or the getting it right or getting it wrong or whatever. It's both people saying, the only problem is we need to take more action to make our relationship better. And so, it's 200%, but really just think of it as yourself 100%. Stop thinking about the other person and just think, how could I create a better relationship? So I guess I sprinkled in my own examples. I was going to give myself as the fourth example. I was going to give you the Don't Criticize, Condemn, or Complain from Dale Carnegie, the Gary Chapman Love Languages, and I was going to give you the Tony Robbins, how he created his own program for himself so he could be happier in his relationships. And now he runs a relationship program that like 10,000 people will come to and stuff. And so there you go, guys. It's not rocket science. It's not crazy. The key is, the thing that experts in relationships are doing differently is that while you are out there thinking about somebody else, these experts in relationships are thinking about themselves. They're only ever asking the question, how can I get the result I want from this relationship? How can I get it? What can I do? Right? And that's what you have to do too. Guys, I hope this helped. I hope you go out and be the change you want to see. The easiest way to start is just don't gossip and don't criticize. Start there. Everything else will come. Have a great day, guys. All right, podcast done. Oh, that was so fun going live. Okay, let's check the live. All right, I don't see any comments, so I guess that's it for today, and I will talk to you later. So let me find my streaming software and close it off. Feel free to check out the recording at the Liberated Millionaire podcast, but that's it for the stream.